History nerds of Reddit, what's a historical fact / tidbit that will always get you to chuckle? That time when around 3 men claimed to be the Pope and all excommunicated each other. Or that time a Pope sold his position. Or that time the King of France straight up had the Pope murdered. Lots of great Pope stories out there. In WW2 Germans were dropping demoralizing letters on London. British used them as cheap toilet paper. TBF, didn't we do the same thing in return? I just laugh at the idea that during the whole period of rationing, the one thing both sides had plenty of was toilet paper. Fun fact, during WW2 the British diet was the best it had ever been until then. They had never been fed a more healthy and well-balanced diet. Mind explaining this one? How did wartime rationing lead to the most healthy diet? A Polish artillery supply corps adopted a bear, made him a soldier, and kept him for the duration of the war. His name was Wojtek. After the war he retired to Edinburgh Zoo where his old comrades would come and give him cigarettes. There's a statue of him in Edinburgh as well. I absolutely love the idea of Polish veterans traveling to Edinburgh for this. BART, homage, where are you going? Scotland. I must give Comrade Bear cigarettes. Why am I laughing at the thought of a bear having flashbacks? Kid eating pop rocks near the enclosure. Bear starts staring at the corner with a cigarette in its mouth. Hendrix guitar riff in the distance. Michel's runes. Archaeologists explored some old Viking chambers and found inscriptions that were 14 feet tall and unreadable. After years deciphering these runes, they translated to, "This is very high. We haven't changed. Fixed some stuff." I wish I could see the look on the face of the archaeologist who translated it. Aren't there some carvings like that in the Hagia Sophia? I seem to recall that some of the Vikings serving as the Varangian guard got up to some amusing hijinks there. Yeah, the runes on the Hagia Sophia are halved and carved these runes. And 4 years before runes were deciphered, people believed his graffiti to be sacred or religious in nature. Imagine patrolling the Alps and you see elephants rolling up, but you don't even know what an elephant is. Imagine patrolling a trench and you see a tank rolling up, but you don't even know what a tank is. Hannibal of Carthage with his war elephants, I presume, traveling over the Alps on his way to destroy Imperial Rome and bringing elephants into Europe for the first time. Imagine how terrifying it must have been for the Roman legionaries, seeing 5 tons of pure muscle barreling down at them at speeds equaling horses. Yet, they availed Hannibal nothing. Rome vanquished him and annexed Carthage. My mistake, not Imperial Rome just yet. Hannibal knew how to win a victory, but not how to use one. Or something like that. Still one of the greatest generals of all time though. In all the Apollo missions 3 guys were sent to the moon, but only 2 guys got into the lander and went down and walked on the moon. The 3rd guy stayed in the command module in orbit and had to listen to the radio chatter of the other 2 guys talking about how badass it was to walk on the moon. Didn't Collins lose all radio contact when he was on the far side? All of the landing zones were on the near side of the moon. Every centimeter pilot lost complete contact with both mission control and the lander when they orbited the far side, as there were no relay satellites in lunar orbit. The loneliest man in the universe. I'm almost 50 and I didn't know about Collins. Maybe I did at one point, but it certainly didn't stay with me until like 2 months ago when I was translating a Japanese manga, of all things. Napoleon had a brother who lived in New Jersey. Must have made family reunions real depressing for that guy. That brother's name? Frank Stallone. That brother also claimed to have seen the Jersey Devil or something that matches descriptions of it. There was a war between Michigan and Ohio over Toledo, and the Ohioans evacuated so fast there weren't even any casualties. As a result, the government gave Michigan the Upper Peninsula and Ohio got to keep Toledo. Michigan won the war, which is why Toledo is now part of Ohio. The UP. Greatest consolation prize possibly ever. More so than consolation prizes, they shortly found the UP to be rich in minerals and the first great boon of the United States. And the 2 states have gotten along wonderfully ever since. I tend to describe it as Michigan and Ohio went to war, Wisconsin lost. Pepsi, the soft drinks, once had the 6th largest military in the world. Due to an agreement with the Russians, they supplied them with drinks until Russia couldn't pay for them anymore. So instead they gave Pepsi an arsenal of submarines and other military equipment, leading to them having the 6th largest military in the world at that moment. Wasn't it Pepsi that offered a Harrier jet as a prize? Then someone collected enough points to actually get it. If so, how's that for a plot twist? They should have used a Russian sub instead, lol. I thought that they simply had the 6th largest navy, not the 6th largest military. Another Pepsi fun fact: it was originally called Brad's drink after the creator, Caleb Bradham. The most rigged election where the winner received 243,000 votes, except there were only 15,000 registered voters. Gotta get that 1,680% voter turnout. Someone commented the last time this was posted that it's sort of a power move. I'm going to fake this election and make it really obvious. Everyone will know that the election is rigged, but no one will do anything about it. Sounds like every 4 years in Ohio and Florida. To make it extra hilarious, the opponents apparently received 9,000 votes, which is more than half the number of registered voters. If that's the only number you had, you would think they must have won. When Governor George Wallace, backed by the Alabama National Guard, blocked 2 black students from entering the University of Alabama, President Kennedy simply took over the Alabama Guard and ordered them to remove Wallace from the entrance. Why does it always have to be Alabama? Missouri loves company. Because Alabama is full of awful people. All of the good people in Alabama leave it, leaving the bad ones. This is a real phenomenon. Brain drain hurts a lot of countries, and with the size of the USA it's not surprising it happens on a local level. Hate to break it to you, but awful people are everywhere. One of the founding fathers, Gouverneur Morris, killed himself by inserting a whalebone into his urethra to help clear up a urinary tract blockage. He must have been hung to need a whalebone. You know what? Maybe that's the legacy he wanted to leave behind. It's not like you want to be known for using a rib bone off of a rat. Giles Corey, one of the men accused and killed during the Salem witch trials, was pressed to death. There was a phrase an accused person was supposed to say even they were brought in for charges, without which a trial couldn't happen. He paused, evidently a bit shocked at what he considered the absurdity of being accused. He was like 75 years old, and the panel he was brought before began to panic. Then he realized what was going on and decided to simply refuse to say the phrase, so they couldn't try him for being a witch. He was brought to basically a ditch, a plank of wood placed over him, and large stones placed on the wood. The intention was to press the phrase out of him. His last words are alleged to be "more weight." This was a genius move on his part, and an take a third option. If he confessed, his family would lose all their property. If he plead innocent, he'd go to court, lose, and his family would lose all of their property. If he dies before that, however, he's still a good Christian man and they can't prosecute his corpse. So his family keeps everything. The assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, literally everything goes wrong until by total coincidence they get the shot. Lost in the wrong way, and turns out the driver with the target on that way and the car just stopped there. His death also led to him. During the Austro-Prussian War, Liechtenstein sent out an army of 80 men. They came back with 81 men, having suffered no casualties, and made a friend of one Austrian man who they brought back home to Vaduz with them. This means that they came back home stronger than they had when they were sent out. Player 81 has joined the game. I came here to say this. I love that story so much. Wasn't it an Italian who joined? If he was Italian, he would have let everyone know that he was Italian. His hands may have been tied. In the 1600s there was a popular trend of painting English Dutch ceramics with a depiction of Adam and Eve. Most looked hilarious. This looks like the OG version of manuscript paint doodles. The Soviets had specially trained dogs for space launches. Before one launch the dog ran away, so they just grabbed a random stray, named it Substitute for Missing Bobik, and sent it instead. This can't be true, but it's hilarious nonetheless. Wikipedia agrees, but the claim is uncited, so take it with a grain of salt. A general in the US Civil War's last words: they couldn't hit an elephant at this distance, but they could hit a general at that distance. Oh, Uncle John Sedgwick. The Civil War equivalent of saying what could possibly go wrong. His men had the right idea, ducking 100 yards, 1000 yards, whatever. Fact of the matter is that they weren't called Confederate sharpshooters for nothing. Cold War condoms. The US may or may not have airdropped extra large condoms labeled medium to mess with Soviet morale. This is a myth. The actual story was Soviets used condoms as barrel protectors. For lend and lease, the Soviet asked for condoms. The US had a supplier, Durex. Durex made these 18 long condoms and called them US small or Texas medium. This has been investigated, and Durex said they never did that. But where the story falls apart because rubber was used in the war effort, so making massive rubber condoms as a joke would not have been done. This describes the whole Cold War. In 1474, a rooster was burned at the stake for the hideous crime of laying an egg. Never fails to make me laugh. Like, imagine how serious they would have been about it and everything. The Middle Ages were wild. Link if you want to read about it. Typo. They tried a pig for witchcraft once. Gave him a lawyer and everything. Your Honor, I don't think the defendant understands what we are saying, much less what witchcraft is. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. In the War of 1812, American troops at Bladensburg were ordered to hold their position no matter what. They wound up retreating so fast that the Brits in their redcoats were passing out from heat exhaustion trying to keep up. Also, Bladensburg was the last engagement where a sitting US President Madison was present on the field. Australian city Melbourne was founded by John Batman. He wanted to name it Batmania. I'm pretty sure that there is a street named that in Melbourne. I just realized John Batman predicted the popularity of the Batman comics. There's a couple of streets in the US named Bateman Street. The E usually disappears from the signs within a week. The Spanish town Huesca declaimed war on Denmark in 1809, but everyone forgot until historian found the declaration of war in 1981. In a similar case, a Dutch admiral declared war on some islands part of Great Britain a couple centuries earlier. Thus we have the 335 Years' War, where peace was signed in 1986. I think it was more that they declared war on Great Britain and the random islands, and then when peace was achieved they just said Great Britain. So it was an oversight. The longest piano piece of any kind is Vexations by Eric Satie. It consists of a 180-note composition which, on the composer's orders, must be repeated 840 times, so that the whole performance is 18 hours 40 minutes. Its first reported public performance in September 1963, in the Pocket Theatre, New York City, required a relay team of 10 pianists. The New York Times critic fell asleep at 4 a.m. and the audience dwindled to 6 masochists. At the conclusion, one sadomasochist shouted encore. Thank you, that did make me chuckle. That one dude thought of the joke 3 hours in, but stayed the rest of the piece just to shout the joke. In WW2, a German submarine was sunk due to a malfunctioning toilet. The toilet had this very tricky system with valves etc, so a guy uses it, but doesn't know which valve to close, so water keeps entering into the sub from the toilet, and it was sunk. The captain's name was Sklit, I think. The best argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with the average voter. Winston Churchill, Hitler's father, married his cousin. We all marry our cousins, if you trace it back far enough. Cleopatra lived closer to the first McDonald's than the building of the pyramid spelling. She lived in San Bernardino, California. Here I thought Cleopatra lived in Egypt and is dead. That people from Hartlepool had never seen a monkey before, put it on trial, and hung it for not answering any questions, so it must have been a spy. Seriously? They couldn't tell that a monkey was not human. It's basically an urban legend. Story is the monkey was from a French shipwreck in the Napoleonic Wars. There's basically no actual evidence that this actually happened. The fact that Australia lost a waterbirds. While this is both true and extremely funny, don't forget that emus are over 6 feet tall, can run at 30 miles an hour, and are essentially dinosaurs that forgot to go extinct. The motherfuckers are scary. Saw some Australian had an emu steal my lunch at a picnic once. Had a friend claim he could smash their kneecaps in, and I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? Fuck. I reckon you'd be better off going up against one of the velociraptors from Jurassic Park.